Something major just happened inside Social Security, and almost no one noticed. While everyone was focused on the big headlines, the government quietly released a new update that changes the way benefits are handled, and I promise you, this is not just another routine announcement. What's hiding behind this update could directly affect how much you receive, when you receive it, and in some cases, whether you receive it at all. This is not the kind of story that makes front-page news because it doesn't sound dramatic enough on paper, but once you understand the detail behind the words, you'll realize how powerful and far-reaching this single change truly is. Most Americans will miss it because they'll only read the first two sentences of the official announcement. They'll hear phrases like modernization, adjustment, and benefit protection, and they'll assume everything is fine. But what if I told you those words were chosen very carefully to hide a structural change that could quietly cut into future payments without ever calling it a cut? That's exactly what we're talking about today, the Social Security change almost no one noticed. Now, when this announcement first came out, the headlines looked simple enough. Updates to improve the long-term stability of Social Security, to better protect low-income retirees, and to modernize the system for inflation. Sounds good, right? But when you actually look at the language inside the policy memo, it reveals something different. It introduces a new formula, a recalibration of how income thresholds are measured, and this small shift redefines who qualifies for full benefits. That's right, the eligibility lines are moving, and most people won't know they've been moved until their checks come in lower than expected. This isn't about whether you worked long enough or paid enough into the system. This is about what happens after you've done all that, when the government quietly changes the rules of how your benefits are calculated. And the craziest part? They've done it in a way that sounds positive. They're calling it an adjusted benefit eligibility floor, which sounds like an improvement, but in reality, it's a strategic lowering of the level where benefits begin to phase out. That means many retirees who thought they were safely within the limits could now find themselves just above the new threshold, losing part of their benefit and wondering why. For years, lawmakers have been warning that Social Security is running low on reserves, that the trust fund could hit a crisis point in the next decade. And now it looks like they found a quiet way to fix that by trimming the edges, tightening the rules, and adjusting the formulas. They're doing it in a way that doesn't make headlines or require a public vote. It's a subtle accounting move, not a major legislative act. But make no mistake, it's one of the most significant changes to hit Social Security in years. In their official documents, they say the goal is to improve equity and sustainability, which sounds fair, but behind that polished language lies a plan to save billions of dollars over time. How? By reducing payouts for those who fall just above the new income brackets. And here's the real kicker. They're selling it as fairness. They're saying that higher-income retirees don't need as much support, even though many of those so-called higher-income retirees are simply middle-class Americans who worked hard, saved modestly, and now rely on both Social Security and small pensions to survive. So what exactly is changing? Under the old system, Social Security used an income threshold to decide whether your benefits would be reduced. Let's say you earned a little extra from a pension, part-time job, or small investment. As long as you stayed under a certain number, your benefits were safe. But the new rule lowers that number and adds what they're calling phase-out zones. These zones mean that even a slight increase in income can trigger a gradual reduction of your check. It's not an all-or-nothing situation. It's a slow, invisible squeeze. Every dollar above the threshold chips away at your benefit until one day you realize you're getting a few $100s less each month than you used to. And because they're framing it as a modernization, they can claim it's not a cut. It's just a reform. That's how they do it, quiet changes wrapped in good intentions. Now, the big question, who's affected? The answer might surprise you. This isn't just about wealthy retirees or people with six-figure pensions. The ones who are hit hardest are those right in the middle, the people who did everything right. They worked for 30, 40 years, saved a little, maybe invested in a modest 401k, and thought they'd have enough to live comfortably. These are not rich people. These are hardworking Americans who tried to prepare. But because the new rule counts more types of income against you, including small distributions, dividends, and even certain part-time earnings, it pushes more people into the reduction zone. That means if you're retired and still working a few hours a week just to keep up with inflation, you could be penalized. You could actually lose money by trying to stay financially responsible. It's a trap that nobody told you about because it's buried under layers of policy language and bureaucratic jargon. You might be wondering, why would they do this now? Why make such a sneaky change when the economy is already struggling and seniors are already dealing with rising costs of living? The truth is, this is about optics. They want to appear fiscally responsible without admitting they're cutting benefits. It's about balancing budgets without facing backlash. If they came out and said, "We're reducing Social Security for millions," people would be furious. But if they say, "We're updating eligibility formulas to ensure fairness," it sounds reasonable. That's how they avoid outrage. It's political strategy at its finest or its worst, depending on how you see it. Now, I've gone through the historical context of these kinds of changes, and this is not the first time they've done it. In previous decades, similar adjustments were made to tax thresholds and COLA calculations, and every time it happened, the public was told it was for sustainability. What they don't tell you is that sustainability often means cutting benefits over time through inflation and formula tweaks. The government saves billions, and retirees lose quietly. This is happening again right now. And here's something else that's concerning. The change paves the way for more like it. Once the eligibility floor is shifted once, it becomes much easier to shift again. Every few years, they can just adjust it further, and nobody will notice because it'll be hidden in technical updates. That's why it's so important to pay attention now before it becomes normalized. Let me paint a real example. Imagine a retiree named Linda. She's 67, living in Arizona, collecting her monthly Social Security check and supplementing it with a small pension from her old job, around $400 a month. Under the old system, Linda's income was perfectly fine. She was under the limit, getting her full benefits. But under this new formula, that extra $400 now counts more heavily toward the income threshold. Suddenly, she's over the line by a small amount, and her benefit starts to drop. She doesn't understand why her check is a little smaller this month. There's no letter, no warning, just a system recalibration. She calls the Social Security office and gets told that the new formula adjusted your payment according to your income bracket. Just like that, she's lost hundreds per year without doing anything wrong. Multiply Linda's story by millions of retirees, and you see the bigger picture. And here's another layer to this that few people realize. This new rule isn't only about what you earn, it's also about how you report it. If your income sources fluctuate, or if you have deferred compensation, annuities, or certain investments, those can now be considered differently under the revised calculation. It's not about how much you truly have to spend, it's about what the government counts. They've changed the definition of countable income, meaning some people who never thought they'd cross a line now will. That's why even retirees who feel safe need to pay attention, because your check could drop without any warning simply due to how your income is categorized. So, what can people do about this? Unfortunately, the change is already in motion, and unless it's challenged or revised, it's going to stay. But what you can do is get ahead of it. Review your income sources, talk to a financial planner, and make sure you understand how these new brackets work. If you're earning even a little bit from part-time work or small investments, see if you can spread that income differently, maybe over time or through tax-advantaged accounts. Don't give the system a reason to penalize you. And most importantly, don't assume this is the last change. If this adjustment goes unnoticed, it will not be the last one. They'll test how much they can get away with quietly, and if the public stays silent, they'll go further. That's how gradual reform works. It's a slow erosion, not a sudden collapse. Now, let's talk about the messaging because this part is fascinating. In the official statement, they use the phrase, ensuring long-term solvency while protecting the most vulnerable. It sounds noble, doesn't it? But who decides who's vulnerable? It's a moving target. The middle class, the very backbone of Social Security, often gets squeezed between those categories. You're not rich enough to be safe, and you're not poor enough to qualify for protection. That's why this announcement matters so much. It shows the direction Social Security is heading toward more selective benefits, more complicated formulas, and more ways to quietly limit what you receive. And here's something I want to make absolutely clear. This isn't about fear, it's about awareness. The worst thing anyone can do right now is assume that Social Security is unchangeable. It's not. The rules have changed before, and they will change again. But you can't protect yourself if you don't know what's happening. That's why this story, behind the announcement, matters. Because while the news headlines are all about stability, the reality behind the scenes is about control. Who controls the narrative, who controls the definitions, and ultimately, who controls the money. And that's why, right now, it's so critical that you know exactly what's going on. So, here's what I'll say to wrap us up. The Social Security change that almost no one noticed isn't a small technical fix, it's a shift in philosophy. It's the government quietly redrawing the lines between who deserves full benefits and who doesn't. They're selling it as progress, but it's really a reset. And while it might not hit everyone immediately, it sets the precedent for deeper changes later. If you're a retiree, a future retiree, or someone helping a parent or grandparent navigate benefits, this affects you. Because when policies like this go unchallenged, they become permanent. And once they're permanent, it's nearly impossible to undo them. So stay alert, stay informed, and don't let the quiet changes slip past unnoticed. Because as history has shown us time and time again, the biggest hits to Social Security never come with breaking news banners. They come with quiet words like adjustment and modernization. Behind those words lies the truth, and now you know what that truth really means.